The Companions of the Cross were not always in the Archdiocese of Halifax, Yarmouth. There was a time when we were invited to come to be here. So our headquarters in Ottawa was visited by, at that time, Archbishop Terence Prendergast. And it was at a time when I was right in the middle of it. I just finished packing up all my boxes. I had some help getting everything on my bins. I was moving to Toronto the next day to do my internship year. So this is in the year 2000. And I'm all ready to go. So in my mind, plan A was just drop by the house, have supper with the brothers, and then get an early night's sleep and get up and move the next morning. So it was all set to go. That was plan A, right? Then plan B comes. I go and find out that, oh, by the way, the Archbishop is coming for supper tonight. Oh, gee, yeah, wow, that's interesting. So, but, there were some senior seminarians there, and they were going to help, Father Bob and them host the Archbishop, and it was just going to be nice to meet him. That was plan B. Okay, the Archbishop's coming. That's kind of up a notch. It's interesting. And then while the Archbishop and Father Bob are walking into the house, sadly, because of the rain, the stairs were slick, and Father Bob fell and actually cut his head open. He had to go to the hospital to get stitches. And so the senior seminarians who I was counting on left to take Father Bob to emergency, and I'm left hosting the Archbishop and a couple guys who were visiting to discern a call. So I'm suddenly thinking, oh man. So thankfully the cook had left the food out for us, so we served up the food. I did my best to set the tables, and after we sat down after grace, the bishop's like, are there any spoons or forks? Oh yeah, spoons and forks. So I get those out there. And then it's time for dessert. We set out the cheesecake, and it was kind of warm, and it was pretty cheesy. It was good, but it wasn't quite what I thought. Well, we ate it politely, and then all of a sudden, me and the Archbishop and a few of the guys that were visiting, we were all there, were doing up the dishes, and Bishop rolled up his sleeves and was joining in. And what did we see as we're putting the food away but a note on the stove that said, please put cheesecake in the fridge, and here's the sauce you can put on top of it. That's why it was so plain and warm. And anyway, so we had a good chuckle about that, but I'm thinking, this is turning into a disaster. I'm just moving tomorrow. I'm not ready to host a bishop. So we were trying to wind down after that, so the bishop's like, can I have a cup of tea? All right, tea, right? So I put the hot water kettle on, and I'm, pull out a mug and grab a tea bag, and the bishop's like, aren't you going to use the teapot? Like, oh, yeah, teapot, right, yeah. So he pulls up, it's dusty as all get out. We haven't used it since 10 years prior probably. He's like, blowing that out. So we're using the proper teapot and doing tea the Halifax way, and then, so we're all ready to go into the living room with our tea. And so I know this house like the back of my hand. So I grab the tea, and I'm walking into the living room to sit down on the couch. But what I did not know was that the cleaning lady that day left the vacuum cleaner in the doorway. So I'm confidently walking with my tea and the bishop's tea into the living room. I go flipping over the vacuum cleaner. I'm flying through midair. No part of my body is touching anything. I'm midair with 2 hot cups of tea. Go crashing into the couch, tea everywhere. And the bishop, who had just seen Father Bob wipe out an hour earlier, was going, oh no, what have I done? So, but everything was okay. We cleaned up. The Archbishop made me, and then he ended up hosting me. He made me the tea, and we were all having a chat. And thankfully, he still invited us to come to the Archdiocese of Halifax, Yarmouth after that. So that was in the year 2000, 24 years ago. And it's great to be here. But it's just one of those things where plan A turns into plan B, then plan C. Things just keep getting ramped up a notch. And I'm sure we've all had moments like that where our plans kind of escalated beyond what we initially anticipated. But in this series that we're doing on the Eucharist through John chapter 6, this is now part 3. And I feel like Jesus, in each section of these Gospels that we're reading, he keeps turning it up a notch, this sort of theology of who he is and what he's here for. And it's getting more and more difficult to understand or to comprehend what he's really asking of us. For example, 2 weeks ago, we had the first installment, and Jesus was showing how he provides for our earthly needs by multiplying the fish and loaves and feeding the 5,000. So he's like, wow, God's a miracle worker. He can feed us in our earthly needs. This is amazing. He's like a new Moses, right? And then, the next time, he ups it a notch and says, don't settle for that alone, because we eat that food and we will die. but what you need is the spiritual bread, the bread of life. And so we talked about how we're pilgrims on our way to heaven. Heaven's our true home, and we're just passing through, and the Eucharist is our pilgrim food on the way. So, okay, we need pilgrim food, and we're on a pilgrimage now. Jesus has changed our destination, And then now, he's saying to us, not only do you need this bread that came down from heaven as your pilgrim food, he ups it a notch and says, I am the bread of life, and the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh. Whoa, okay, now it's up a whole other notch. What do you mean? That's why they're grumbling and wondering, like, how can this be? How can he give us his flesh to eat? How can he be the bread of heaven, the bread of life? So it gets personal. And so the beauty of this is when we look at our theme for this series, it's give us this bread always. And now that we know that what he's giving to us is his real presence, body, blood, soul, and divinity, it's a whole other level. He's giving us himself. And when we say, give us this bread always, we're kind of saying, give us yourself always. And us giving ourselves to the Lord. That's why when we receive communion, we're not just receiving bread. We're not just receiving our pilgrim food on our journey to heaven. It's up to notch now. We're receiving Jesus. Wow. What a whole other level. What a whole other level of intimacy and relationship with God. It's intimate even more than even what married couples would experience. It's something that's so deep and personal, so connected, that we need to ponder and marvel and look at any areas of our life that we can kind of be a little cold or casual when we receive the Eucharist, because now we know this is a calling to a deep, deep communion with Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory, who loves us with a love beyond all telling. I wonder how many Catholics throughout the world who come forward for communion and recognize just the depth of the intimacy and the love that's going on, this communion that's happening between God and humanity, with you and Jesus and you. This is such a wonderful intimacy that we want to ponder today. Love. Love is something that we experience in different ways. And when we receive the bread of life, when we receive Jesus, we're receiving love. I remember once doing an inventory about what's called the 5 love languages. Maybe you've heard of it. It's been around for quite a few decades now by Gary Chapman. And it's this idea that we all receive love in different ways that sort of hits home at a deeper level. We have different love languages. So for example, there's physical touch, there's quality time, there's words of affirmation, there's acts of service, and small gifts. Right? These are ways that we can all show love for each other. We can give physical touch, we can spend quality time with the person, we can affirm them with our words, we can give them, acts of service, helping them out here and there. We can do small gifts, like leave little notes or gifts just to say, hey, just little word, just ways. And that's how we love up on people that we care about. And this inventory is to find out, of those 5, there's tends to often be 1 or 2 that kind of rise to the surface that really touch our heart, depending on kind of our background or our makeup, And for me, when I did it, the top 2 were quality time and physical touch. So as much as I appreciate words of affirmation or acts of service or small gifts, it's what really gets through to me that I know that I'm loved is if there's that physical touch or that quality time with the person. I wonder if the physical touch part is more because I'm blind and it kind of gives reality. Okay, you're not just a floating voice out there, you're a person, But for me, that's me. But if you were to do that inventory, you might come up with 2 different ones that rise to the surface, because we're all different. And Jesus, here he is, the bread of life, the bread of heaven, wanting to come to us in this deep communion. He wants to love up on us. And in doing that, he knows that we all receive love in different ways. And so he encapsulates all 5. He's because he is love, right? So when we receive him, it's quality time with Jesus. This time every time we come for Mass, he is there for us. He says, behold, before he ascended to heaven, I do not leave you orphans. I will be with you till the end of the age. And the Eucharist is the way that he's with us. Quality time. We can always have time with Jesus in the Eucharist. He's always there for us, no matter what. Especially when we receive him in the Eucharist, he's right within us and in our hearts. We can just dwell with and sort of soak in his presence and just be with him, especially in our prayer after communion. He's also with us in physical touch, right? We can taste and see that the Lord is good. Right? We get to not just have an emotional or sentimental connection with Jesus, but we get to receive him in the Eucharist and actually physically feel the host, on our tongue and into our bodies, and to have that connection with Jesus, to taste the host, right? To swallow the host. There's this intimacy with Jesus that is something that just gives it a deeper reality, right? And we know by faith that it is not bread, but actually the very body and soul of Christ. How beautiful is that? And it's also words of affirmation for us in the sense that when we receive the Word made flesh, Jesus, who is the Word of God, coming to us, affirming us, saying, I love you, I give everything for you, all of who I am, I give to you. You are worthy. I love you. I desire relationship with you. I want to connect with you and you with me so that you can bear fruit for the kingdom, right? He has purpose for us so we can feel affirmed, we belong, we're loved. This is the beauty of the Eucharist. And he loves us also in the acts of service, right? By all that he wants to do for us. He's here. He's like, I'm here for you. I'm here for you in your day-to-day life. I want to help you. I want to serve you. I want to love up on you. I am your God, and I'm here for you. He was willing to help us with the little things of life that we can turn to him. He says, come to me, you who are weary and heavily burdened. I will give you rest. Right? He's here to help us. And in the Eucharist, he comes to us in a way saying, I'm here. I'm going to minister to you right here. Whatever you're going through right now on this day, I'm here entering into that world, into that reality, and I want to help you with these little acts of services, these actual graces in the Eucharist. And finally, for little small gifts, it's this idea of how humble and small does the Lord come to us in the host, in the Eucharist. It's so infinitely profound, and he comes to us so humbly and simply as a small token, yet so huge in its impact. So here I am, just a small little gift to remind you that, hey, I'm here, I love you. It's this little way. So to whatever degree that we receive love, whatever love language, reaches deeply into us, Jesus has all the bases covered in the Eucharist. Because it is not now just bread that he's giving us. It's no longer now just pilgrim food on our journey to heaven. It's himself. And so we are called to intimacy with Christ. And yet sometimes I think we neglect that intimacy, don't we? We don't often turn to Jesus to receive that level of love and personal touch. We don't often turn to the Lord for this, and yet we can. It's an infinite well of amazing grace. When we come forward to the Eucharist, may we be ever more mindful, may we be ever more heartfelt, and ever more willing, giving God permission. When we come forward to receive the host, let's be mindful of who we're receiving and how personal and intimate this moment really is. Let's be heartfelt in opening our hearts to letting Jesus love up on us and loving him too. And may we come with an open will saying, yes, Lord, have your way with me. I love you. I want to do your will. And if we do that, imagine if we, when we come forward for communion, are mindful of who we're receiving and we're open and heartfelt in receiving his love and we're willing to do whatever he asks of us, this will change our lives. Like St. Paul was writing in the Ephesians, moving away from jealousy and slander and all these negative ways of living and more to we're being transformed into loving each other, caring for each other, being people of peace and righteousness. Right? That's what God is asking of us. And the Eucharist can do that to us if we truly encounter Jesus, the living bread, the Lord of love, into our hearts. That's my hope for all of us today, is that we can grow ever more deeply in our mindfulness of who we're receiving, to really have that heart-to-heart connection with Jesus, who is perfection of love, and that we can really give him our permission to have his way with us, so that we can grow in this deeper transformation as we move from glory to glory on our journey towards heaven. Amen.